Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. Is your event feedback providing actionable insights? Presented by Meetings Today with Brian Ludwig from CVent. My name is Tyler Davidson. I'm Vice President and Chief Content Director for Meetings Today, and I'm excited to welcome you to this webinar. Our webinars cover a variety of topics that are all important to the meetings industry, so we hope you'll join us for them all. And we also offer a number of newsletters in addition to our monthly magazine, and be sure to check us out on the web at meetingstoday.com. We'd like to begin today with a brief polling question. A pop-up should appear on your screen momentarily. It will read, please enter the number of people watching this event with you, and please make sure to include yourself. To answer the question, simply select your response and then click submit, and I'll give you a few seconds to do that. Thank you. Today's webinar is worth 1 clock hour of credit in the meeting and event design domain for the CMP application through the Events Industry Council. To receive credit for attending this webinar, you must be present for the full hour. And upon completion of the webinar, you'll be taken to a brief survey from CVent and then related to the related Meetings Today webinar club page to obtain your credit. We encourage you to ask questions during the presentation. You may submit your questions at any time by typing your question in the Q&A area at the bottom of the screen. Should you experience any technical difficulties, please send a message in or call 800-553-8878. Before we get started with today's content, I wanted to make sure everyone was aware of another great upcoming webinar this month. So join us March 25th for a risk management primer, how to protect your attendees and organization from disaster, presented by Brenda Rivers. Also on our website, you'll find a vault of information on past webinars, including this one available for you to view at any time. Visit meetingstoday.com/webinars to learn more about these events, or look under the webinars navigation tab on our website and then click on demand webinars in the drop-down menu and watch now. Now I'd like to introduce today's speaker, Brian Ludwig. Brian Ludwig joined CVent in 2000, shortly after the company was founded. He was initially a top contributing sales rep and rose through the ranks over the years. As Senior Vice President of Sales, he oversees worldwide sales of CVent's flagship event management and marketing platform. To this end, Brian travels across the globe and is also often called upon to speak at conferences regarding technology trends impacting the meetings and events industry. Brian works hand in hand with CVent's global sales team and with leadership across the organization to help shape strategy and direction in terms of product roadmap, client services, marketing initiatives, operational efficiencies, and acquisitions. And with that, I'm going to hand things off to the speaker. Welcome, Brian.
Thank you, Tyler. Appreciate it. Excited to share this content with the group today. So what we're going to talk about is your event feedback providing actionable insights? And I think we all are in the habit of asking for feedback from our attendees, but the question really is, are we able to make good sense out of it and make important key business decisions based on that data that we've collected? And sometimes that comes down to the tools we're using, sometimes that comes down to the strategy, sometimes that comes down to management embracing the data that's shared. So we'll talk about all of those things. But first, a little bit about me. 20 years in the event industry, employee number 5 at CVent. We're now about 300 employees. And I do consider myself proudly a full-blown event tech nerd. Love talking about events. I love talking about technology. And I'll tell you, despite obviously the challenging climate that we're all in right now, I think we all know events are here to stay. And while we'll have a blip, we're all going to power through this, and we all know the value and the ROI that events deliver to an organization. So proud to be a part of this industry and bring some of this tech to your attention today. I do want to bring up one last housekeeping note. I think Tyler will kick off the survey at the end, but you get a free ebook called Listen Up, Exploring the Importance of Event Feedback, and a gift card for coffee if you take the survey after the session today. So be on the lookout for that in about a half an hour or ish. We'll push that to your screen, and we'd love to get your feedback. Clearly, we have to ask for feedback in a session about event feedback. So we will drink our own champagne, or in this case, drink our own coffee and ask for feedback, just like we're going to suggest that you ask for feedback of all of your attendees. So what we're going to talk about today, the importance of event feedback, why it matters, how it can help align your goals around your events, setting those goals. Different types of events should have different goals and therefore different feedback that you're looking to collect. How do you design a strategic feedback program? There are lots of different methodologies. There's some smart things to do. There's some things you want to avoid. I'll give you some insights into that. We'll talk about tools that you could leverage to help you get these insights. And then I'll share with you a case study about Cvent Connect, which is our large annual conference that we hold in Vegas, and how we leverage feedback to make some adjustments to the event year over year. So what do we mean by feedback? Feedback could be data collected directly from a stakeholder, usually via a survey. So that's obvious. And the less obvious might be passive data collection, breadcrumbs or trails left by attendees. People are able to vote with their feet by going to sessions, going to the keynote, meeting with exhibitors, going to quick demos in different activation areas around the show floor. They're showing their interest in what matters to them. It's on us as organizers to be able to get our arms around those footprints and turn them into digital data, which then makes it more actionable. So we'll talk about some of that today as well. So the importance of feedback is pretty obvious, but I'll tell you this, it depends on the goal. What is the goal of the events? For many, it's going to be about the attendee experience. Maybe if it's an internal event, it's a quick and dirty kind of information dump, maybe you don't care much about the attendee experience. So, but if it's a customer event where you're trying to bring in new prospects or renew existing business, the attendee experience is going to be paramount to you. So what sorts of insights would you look for if the goal was exceptional attendee experience? You'd look to see their engagement levels. Well, are they going to sessions? Are they meeting with other people? Are they showing up for one-on-ones? You're going to want insights on how was your brand portrayed? What is the perception of your business and your overall message? And then you're going to want to know what products they're interested in. So you might want to get direct feedback on what are they walking out of the event excited about, so that the sales and marketing team that's going to follow up with those hot leads, quote unquote, would be able to get right into a conversation around the stuff that matters the most to those attendees. But what if the feedback or goal of the event is more around proving event performance to stakeholders? So you want to justify the substantial investment that you're making in meetings and events. For many organizations, 25 to 30% of your marketing spend is spent on live meetings and events. And again, that might dip in Q2, but I think it'll come roaring back, and perhaps to make up for lost time in Q2 and Q4, maybe it's going to be 35 to 40% of an organization's marketing spend. So what sort of insights would you want to be able to justify a continued investment in events? You're going to want to look at trends and benchmarks. How are we doing compared to our peers' events? You want to measure the impact. Are the event attendees driving dollars? So is it impacting pipeline? And there's easy ways to sort of see what happens after someone attends an event. Is there new opportunities that are created? Are new business dealings closed won in a CRM system, and tie that back to the 20 different events you might be doing? And it'd be interesting to stack rank your 20 events and say, well, this one's the highest in terms of ROI and dollars generated, and these 5 at the bottom are the least. And you might then make decisions on cutting or tweaking the investment in some of those events on the low end of that spectrum. So you need to capture insights over the dollars that are generated to understand, do you or don't you want to continue with those event initiatives? Next, what if it's about event logistics and you want to collect feedback around that? So you have to ask very basic operational kinds of questions. Were you satisfied with the space, with the food, with the communication? You want to aggregate all of the negative comments and perhaps use sentiment analysis to understand what are the areas of feedback that we're collecting. you could identify improvement areas. And the cool part about this, and we'll get into it in a little bit, if you're collecting that feedback immediately and on the fly, you could perhaps make improvement, not next month or next year, but perhaps later that same day, or at the very latest, maybe by tomorrow. So you're making changes immediately based on operational sorts of feedback that you're collecting as the event is going. There's key data you want to collect for all the different stakeholders. And it's kind of like, if you ask a question, you can think about how each of the different constituents of an event might care about that data. As an example, if you knew the highest trafficked booths, then planners could better optimize space. So if this year we know these are our 7, 10, 15 most popular booths, and they've paid us the most, maybe we want to give them premier space to create nice flow on the show floor. What if we want to know what are the key drivers of event attendance? If we're able to ascertain that through surveying, we could refine our message. So if we uncover this year in 2020, everyone cares about these 3 topics. Well, A, I could then tweak the event to be more in line with what I just learned in the survey, but I'll also use that data to optimize my marketing for the next event, knowing the hot buttons and knowing the things that are top of mind for my attendees. So then I will use that and maybe segment my messaging for the next event and hit on those very specific points for different audience types. What if I knew product interest by attendee? After the event, as we talked about, sales will then be able to get in on that account and share relevant information faster that helps drive the business forward. And if I knew how much pipeline was generated, executives would be able to justify expenses. The main point here being, within an organization, you'll have planners, marketers, sales team, and executives. Feedback in different parts of the event lifecycle will help drive business decisions for all 4 of those key stakeholders within your organization. So there's different types of goals you'd set based on the type of conference. So let's say you're doing a user conference, like the CVent Connect example I gave before. The goal of a user conference is going to be to deepen your existing client relationships and maybe generate new business. So what are the types of KPIs that are going to be most important? And these will be different compared to, say, maybe an internal event, which we'll look at in 1 second. So here we're going to care about engagement. How long were people at sessions? Did they even go to sessions? There's a concept out there called a ghost attendee. Someone gets a badge on day 1. Where they go for the next 3 days is anyone's guess. So the idea would be, what if we could capture all of that and understand where they're going and how engaged they are? That could be very valuable at a user conference. What are the top ranked sessions? What are the lowest ranked sessions? Perhaps I won't invite those speakers or those topics back to my event next year. Are people satisfied with the venue? What's their overall satisfaction level? How about a net promoter score? Top visited booths, and are the exhibitors satisfied? Are they going to continue to invest in your user conference, which honestly is going to be contingent on, did they get good leads? Did they have good conversations on the show floor? If so, and their satisfaction level is high, then we can count on future investment from those same exhibitors. If not, we know we might need to replace some of that event revenue with new exhibitors, perhaps in a different area of the business. What if it's an internal meeting? Here's an example of our sales kickoff. We do one each year. Last year we did something, our theme was Stay Hungry. It was back in February of 2019. We just held a new one last month. The goal of an internal meeting is to train and coach the team and to motivate them to be charged up and leave that meeting with the corporate mission in mind and talking about our products and solutions in the marketplace as best they can based on the guidance we've given them. And that could be the same for anyone's internal meeting, sales kickoff or otherwise. So again, you'll be caring about the attendee engagement and sessions, and you'll care about speakers. But some of the other KPIs that I talked about earlier for an external event wouldn't make sense for an internal meeting. So the key is the feedback mechanisms that you set up should vary and be more intense or less intense based on the type of event and what types of feedback you're looking to collect. Those were for events that you host, an internal meeting, a user conference. Many of you, I'm guessing, based on my daily conversations, I speak with people that manage both events they host and events that they go to. So you may go to an event, trade show, as a sponsor or exhibitor. And then you put 15, 20 people or 5 people at your booth to have interactions with attendees of the conference and score those conversations so that afterwards you guys can get an ROI from the people that you've met at that trade show. So the goal is generating leads, deepening client relationships. So maybe you got a speaking session at that trade show. Those are leads. So attendance at a speaking session is something you'd want to track. The rating of the speaking session. Of course, the booth visits that you get, those are leads. What products are they interested in at the booth? Maybe there were pre-qualification questions ahead of time. And then that way, when someone walks into a meeting at your booth, your salesperson or marketing person manning the booth would be able to have a pointed and better conversation because you collected feedback and information around that meeting ahead of the meeting. What was the appointment satisfaction level? And then your 15 people that you sent, how satisfied were they with the booth location, with the leads that they got, with the booth design, with the content and collateral and slide decks that they were supplied with at the show? Were they satisfied with the lead capture devices that were used? There's so much you can capture to further optimize what is oftentimes a very large investment in a trade show program. Some of you might go to 5 events a year. Some of you might go to 100. At CVent, we go to 200 events per year where we get a booth or have a sponsorship. So capturing information on our trade show program is super critical to us so we can decide where we want to invest or pull back investment. So some best practices about the types of questions that you'd ask in a survey. And some of this may be obvious, some of this maybe not as much, but I want to go through these 6 real quick. You want to ask both qualitative and quantitative questions. And what do I mean by that? Quantitative would be something like, there's a drop down. How many, you ask a question and there's 4 choices. And then you'd have data over how many folks said A versus B versus C versus D. Qualitative would be more of an open-ended question. And an open-ended question is valuable, but you certainly don't want to make a survey of all open-ended questions because you'll have drop-off rate. So it's a balance. We think 80% quantitative and then 20% qualitative, a few questions that will help you capture sort of open-ended feedback, which could be very telling. And again, you could use sentiment analysis tools to help you make sense of all that and not even necessarily read all of that qualitative feedback. Of course, best case scenario is you do read it, but if you had literally 20,000 people share qualitative feedback, sentiment tools would be very helpful. You want to keep consistency in questions year over year or quarter over quarter. This allows you to look at trend lines. If you're never asking the same questions year over year, how can you compare if you're getting better or worse? You want to avoid double-barreled questions. You can skew a survey to get a question that you want, and it might be an unintended consequence that the survey author has to deal with simply because you wrote a bad question. So if you asked a question, hey, what is your opinion on this and this and this? Well, I might have a different opinion on each of those 3 topics, but you're forcing me into one answer that clubs all 3 of those things together. So if you want feedback on each of those topic areas, you need to separate it out or you will not get good data. Avoid leading questions that use non-neutral language. So it's very easy to guide someone down a path you want. You want to eliminate bias and stay very neutral in your approach. You want to steer clear of absolutes. If you give people 2 choices, you're going to get bad data. So generally what you want to do, of course, is have a range. So you might have a whole bunch of different topic areas that you want feedback on. Don't make it an always or a never or a yes or a no. If you want a true sentiment on how they feel, you want intensity levels. So you might go from always to never, but you have 5 levels or 7 levels. That's very common, as we all know. And remember, ask follow-up questions. Most survey tools today would give you the ability to, once you get an answer to a certain question, there could be a sub-question or follow-up question that is related to the value that I just gave. So if everyone says they're interested in topic A of the 4 topics, well, then maybe you want to double click into topic A and find out which of the following 5 subtopics is most interesting to them within topic A. Or maybe it's a open-ended question. Someone shares that they're dissatisfied. You're going to want detail over that dissatisfaction. But of course, that shouldn't pop up for someone that's highly satisfied. You want to collect feedback throughout the event lifecycle. So before, during, and after. It's not just up front. It's not just at the end. So let's think about the entire continuum of a strategic feedback program. Before the event, you've got a captive audience. They're trying to sign up for your event. Ask them good questions. Now, you could take advantage of that situation and make the questions arduous because it is a captive audience, but maybe you would lose registrations. So it's a balancing act. They are looking to sign up, so you've got a great opportunity, but don't make it too cumbersome that leads to drop off. Now, very good tools will show you where in the registration experience they dropped off. So you'd be able to see, are people dropping off on question 5 or question 11? And then you'll be able to see, maybe we should tweak some of our questions because this is where we're getting drop off. So that's pre-qualifying questions. That's maybe even before an event. You might want to ask questions before you even set up the event. Who's going to be interested in coming at this location? These are going to be the topics. These are going to be speakers. Would you attend? That's going to help you tweak the content and think through the event. Well, now they're signing up. That's the registration form. That's another opportunity to ask people what they care about, what matters, and help them further qualify themselves. If someone can't make it, ask them why not. So when you send invitations to people or you put links on your website, don't just give people a yes option. Give them a regret or a no option, and you'll get very valuable insights. Why are people not able to make it? You might have your own guess, but if you had tangible data that showed you why people are saying no, you could then make tweaks to your future events. Is it cost? Is it timing? Is it location? Are they just not interested? Are they sort of interested, but they're the wrong person and they want to suggest someone else within their organization to attend that event? Then you could make those people a part of your marketing campaigns in the future. You could tweak the price. You could tweak the location. You could tweak the messaging. You will have a lot of power if you're collecting regrets. And then cancellation surveys, which is of course happening now. Some people are not going to be comfortable attending an event, even if the event is on. So many events are forging ahead, but maybe the traveler no longer wants to fly to Seattle for that event. Well, Seattle's a bad example because maybe that event is canceled, but they no longer want to fly to LA for an event. Great. Let's capture that feedback. Why are they bailing on the event? And understand what's going on. During the event, you want to capture feedback in the middle of the event. Everyone's walking around with a supercomputer in the palm of their hand, their iPhone, their Android. We can get engagement straight from that mobile device. So if they have an app, what are they doing inside of the app? Are they messaging people? Are they posting on the activity feed in the app? Are they posting to social? Are they setting appointments with folks? Are they favoriting sessions? Are they taking pictures and sharing that within the community? There's a lot of different things someone can be doing during the event in the app, and that will help us understand engagement levels. You could do a survey inside of the app as well, or some people like to set up in the hallways kiosks. So as people are walking out, give them the ability to give a quick and simple feedback electronically. Now, sure, you can give pen and paper. It sort of works, but it takes a very long time to tabulate that information, and how many people are really going to do that? You're going to have drop off. So if you make it super easy inside of the app, or if you make it easy for people to do something electronic as they're walking out, you'll get more feedback during the event. Maybe you allow for people to set appointments with each other. Well, how many people are showing up for those appointments? How many scans were there, etc. So then you know how engaged are people by how many appointments did they go to. And then last, during the event, notice I write beacons and RFID. We have a way to passively track folks. So their badge can contain a chip, an RFID chip or a Bluetooth built in so that it's talking to beacons that are peppered around the show floor. We then know where are people going. Did they go to the keynote? Did they go to a breakout session? Did they go to appointments? Or are they at the pool? This is critical information that'll help you understand engagement levels. After the event, we need to know, what do people think about sessions? Specifically, what do they think about speakers? They might have loved the session topic, but they didn't love the speaker. Those are different questions. We want to know how exhibitors and sponsors felt. Because again, are we going to be able to bank on them returning and making an investment in our event in the future? We want to know from the booth staff as well. So a lot of key information throughout the continuum. It's not just a before or after proposition. And the type of data that you want to collect would be different based on the learning objective, excuse me, the objective of the event, which could be learning, entertainment, or networking. So I think people go to events for these 3 reasons, right? I'm going to be inspired by content and learn great stuff. I might be going to be entertained, or I might be going to further build out the community of folks that I know within this industry. And based on those objectives, your survey methodologies and feedback can differ. So let's think about during the event. If the event is all about education, you want to ask questions before and during the event. And the reason that is because you can then course correct and change things as the event is going. Entertainment. If something's going wrong with a performance of some kind, you want to measure that in the moment. Getting that after the event is too late. So let's take a look just after the event, in the first, like say, week after the event. Was the learning outcome achieved? The content's going to be freshest in people's minds right then and there. So you want to capture the retention of that learning and what it meant to them immediately in that post-event survey. You want to ask if they made connections that will be meaningful in the first 5-6 days. That should be part of the post-event survey. But later on, this is what a lot of people don't do. Are we checking back in 5 weeks later, 6 months later? Was the teaching implemented in their business? Did those networking opportunities manifest into long-term business relationships? You'll never know that 5-6 days after the event. So this is a very smart idea that a lot of people don't do, but I encourage feedback campaigns 3 to 6 months after the event to pulse check if the learning and the networking had lasting power. You want to collect feedback from all stakeholders. This is sort of obvious: attendees, sponsors, exhibitors, event staff, leadership. We talked about this a little bit, so let's drill in to how you'd want to design some of these survey questions and things to think about. You need to get a tool that gives you the ability, and there's a lot out there. Cvent has a tool that does this, but I don't want this to be self-serving. There are lots of different survey tools, so I really want to just teach you about things you should be thinking about as you look to technology that you might want to implement to help you with your feedback. You need different question types. You need logic that would dynamically personalize surveys. So when I answer a certain question, maybe I skip to question number 9. Or maybe I branch to the left, but someone else answered a different way, they branched to the right. Or those sub-questions. So you need a lot of design capabilities. Or we have a cool concept called piping logic. I answer question 6 a certain way. You can have my answer to question 6 pipe into question number 11. So the value that I gave is even a part of a future question that I get. So pretty cool things that you can do to tailor that experience based on how someone is making their way through the feedback. You want to capture both session feedback and event feedback. Not all tools can do that. So you want to make sure you can capture at a high level, what did they think of the event afterwards? And you want to drill in at the session level. What do they think of the session? And did they get the value out of it that they had hoped for? You want speaker feedback. Now you might say, well, isn't that the same thing as session feedback? There could be 4 speakers at one session. You might want to capture feedback on all 4. Or a very common mechanism at an event is a panel. So there are 4 people on the panel. I want to know how each of those 4 performed in the eyes of the attendee. You want to do multiple event surveys. So you want to link similar events to fast track setup. So if I set up an event last week and I'm doing another event next month, why not clone and have all the same questions, maybe slightly tweak them, but more likely leave them the same because they all fall into the same event category. And then you'll be able to compare feedback between events over time. And last, you want post-survey automation. So if you have tools that are automatically tracking how people showed up. Did they show up? Did they not show up? Why would you want to have to click any buttons to have a survey go out? A survey should automatically go out to attendees. A different survey should automatically go out to no-shows. Why were you unable to make it? So you want smart logic that gives the right follow-up information to the right people based on actions they've taken or haven't taken. I'll go a step further. Many events, not only do I need to show up, I need to answer a bunch of questions, and then I get credits. So our tool, or lots of tools, could allow for a survey to be completed, which can serve as like a test. And maybe I have to hit a certain score and attend, and then I get a certificate. And all of that can be automated. So I have to have attended, answered a survey, gotten a certain score, and then I get a certificate. And if you don't have software that helps you do that, that is a very painful set of steps one would need to go through to perform what I just mentioned. So let's talk about a mobile app. There's an accessibility advantage, right? Again, paper and pen could work, but it's not working so great anymore. And everyone's got an iPad or a phone in the palm of their hands that would enable them to give direct feedback. And that can be done at the session level. So we talked before how important it is to get it at the session level. A mobile app can easily make that available. You could even send a push notification as someone exits a session. So, hey, you just finished this session, please give us your feedback. Or when I walk into the room, at the end of this session, we're gonna want your feedback. It's out on your screen right now so you can take care of business. So there's lots of ways to guide people to the right location so that they're taking feedback seriously, because that's exactly what you want. The worst thing that could happen for you is that you get a 5–10% response rate. You want to make it easy for people so you're capturing really valuable insight across a broader swath of your attendees. Chatbots. You might have already heard of the concept of a chatbot inside of mobile apps or via SMS. You could ask questions of the chatbot. Hey, where's lunch being served? Where's the restroom? Where are the coffee stations? What time is the keynote speaker, et cetera, et cetera. So chatbot technology is out there, but now what we're seeing are folks using chatbot. Uh-oh, can everyone not hear me?
I can hear you, Brian. Hello? You may have just cycled out there, Brian. Just lost you. We'll wait a second for Brian to come on. I don't know. I could play a trumpet solo for you or something now while we wait, but I'm sure you'll all want to hang on because it's such a great presentation. So hang on a second, and I'm sure Brian will be back very, very soon.
Okay, everyone
You're
hear me
back.
now? Well, that was very strange. That's never happened before. I got a message that my speaker conked out in the middle of the presentation. So I'm glad I noticed that. All right, so chatbot, the idea there would be that you can go ahead and use a chatbot for feedback. So not just asking questions about where is something, at what time something starts, but maybe via the chatbot, you could push a question and get feedback straight through SMS or through a chatbot inside of a mobile app. Okay, I talked about passively collecting data. So again, through beacons or RFID, you can find out where people are and what they're engaging with. You can put this in large spaces and hallways. You can put this at doorways to keynote sessions. You could put this at doorways of breakout sessions as well. But it is key. This is a little big brother-ish. You want to be very upfront about the fact that you're going to use passive collection with your attendees. So what you would do is when people are checking in, you show them that we are going to give you a badge that gives us the ability to track what you're engaging with, and it's going to help us communicate with you in areas that would matter to you. Do you agree to this? And generally, since most people are there for education and networking, and this will help in both regards, they say yes, but you do need to give them that option. And then ultimately, if you're doing this well, you're tracking people and all of the activities from surveys up front, from session feedback, from speaker feedback, to passively tracking where they go. What you're ultimately going to be able to do is harness 20, 30 different data input points of what they're doing or not doing at your event, right? They have this whole continuum from before, during, and after. They have 50 touch points with you as the organizer, some of it in the mobile device, some via surveys, some by just walking around. What if you were able to have an engagement score that summarizes all of those activities into one unified score? So say you have 500 attendees to a conference and you're doing everything that I mentioned throughout this presentation. The dream would be you could have stack ranked top to bottom, most engaged to least engaged attendee. So these 20 people are 85 to 100, and then it's 84, 83, all the way down to 1. So again, when your marketing team and sales team is going to follow up with attendees of a conference to understand their engagement level based on all of these myriads of ways that we're collecting feedback, could be so powerful in moving business forward faster. And then you can get great looking analytics and reports that would analyze your overall event and help you find insights and share with stakeholders. Bring all of this stuff together. Here's another example of a report, maybe on an attendee by attendee basis. So here, previously, I was looking at the overall event. Now I'm drilling in on this guy named Landon and specifically seeing exactly what he did session by session, attendance, lead capture. Did he get scanned at different booths? Has he been active on the show floor? So looking at it in the aggregate is key, but also looking at it person by person is super helpful. And all of this here could guide that engagement score that I was just speaking about a moment ago. There are some cool trends coming up in the industry. Some of these stuff is already out there, so it's not all new ideas, but I'll tell you, most of these things are not that standard in feedback approaches that we see. So one idea is benchmarking. So sure, comparing you to yourself is very valuable. We talked about that. Ask the same questions year over year, and that's going to help you understand how you're doing against yourself. You could do pace reporting. Wow, this year, 4 months out, we're at 62% of our registrant goal, but last year we were at 80%. We better ramp up our marketing efforts. Very valuable stuff. But how are you doing compared to the benchmarks in the industry? So you want to get data in your space, in your industry, and understand what they've seen and benchmark yourself against that. So more and more organizations are making their data available to aggregators that will keep their data private and anonymized. But there's so many benchmarks out there. Even CVent, we put out some benchmarks around best practices for event management and timelines for different things, and we publish different reports of that nature. What you want to do as an organizer is compare yourself to some of those averages. Interactive and prescriptive surveys. You want to ask people what they want to attend. So that's how we do it today, right? People walk through a survey, they walk through session selection process, and they specify what they want. Because it's important. You want to be able to set the room properly, have the right number of seats, the right number of food. You want to be able to handle all the logistics. So understanding what people care about ahead of time is valuable. But what if you could promote things that you think would be valuable to them based on what we know about them from previous interactions or their social profile? There's a way through AI to share with people speakers, sessions, exhibitors, things of that nature that we think are going to be good fits for that attendee. So AI is coming. More and more survey feedback tools will allow for it, so we can drive people into an experience that is appropriate for them. Regarding that, highly personalized and timely feedback. So we're inundated with surveys, we're inundated with emails. It's really important to solicit that feedback, one, right away, as we talked about, But two, have it be highly personalized. If you're going to send an email after the event, because only so many people fill it out on site, that better be specific to me. You better know what I attended, what I didn't attend. I shouldn't get questions for elements of the event that I didn't go to. If I'm a speaker, I should get very specific questions than a general attendee. If I'm a member, I should get different questions than, say, a non-member. So you need tools that will bifurcate the questions based on who I am and based on actions I took or did not take at the event. Now, again, you want to offer that at the event, but then also have something go out immediately on the heels of the event so you can capture it both ways and get the largest response rate. And last, facial recognition, really not out there with the masses, but I think it is coming. The idea here would be, what if I had cameras and sensors in the room live that read your face while I'm speaking? So there's 400 people in the room. We can have cameras that scan the room and look for space between the bridge of the nose and the lips, and between the end of the lips to the cheekbone. And it also looks at the forehead. Is it crumpled up or not? All sorts of things that it can do now to understand, are they bored? Are they engaged? Are they cold? Are they hot? Are they tired? There are even ways to communicate with a speaker live while they're speaking, through teleprompters, through mobile apps. There's lots of different ways. What if you could say, you're losing the audience, or this is happening, or that's happening? Make an adjustment. So think about it. Paper and pen, you're not tabulating that data until next year. So it'll be valuable next year. Even if you use a mobile app, you could tabulate the data immediately, but you're probably not going to make a change on the fly in a session. That might help you for sessions later in the day or for tomorrow, because you've captured great insights. Facial recognition, that could give you feedback that's aggregated in the moment, and you make an immediate change based on what you've just collected. So that sounds kind of crazy. I think we're going to go in this direction, and it's going to be really helpful. It'll be expensive for the time being, but I think this will become more commonplace as costs come down and technology gets better. Let me give you a quick case study. Cvent Connect. I mentioned it before. It's an annual user conference for our customers and prospects. We hold it in Las Vegas in June. We're expecting about 4,500 people. We also hold another one with 1,100 people in London in October. We also have 330 exhibiting companies out of those 4,500 attendees. The goal for us is to increase our attendees, up-level the event experience, and convert attendance into sales pipeline afterwards. So we asked a lot of questions in a survey. And in 2018, we understood a whole bunch of areas that people weren't happy. And we nailed it in a lot of areas, and there were areas of opportunity. The exhibitors on the trade show floor weren't happy with the layout. So based on that feedback, we upgraded the layout. We had a happy hour on the show floor to keep people there longer, and we created incentives for pre-scheduled appointments. We also noticed that we had a major drop-off on attendees after 3 o'clock. So change, we added really strong afternoon content and keynotes and added in some happy hours. Evening events, we had some mixed feedback on the design. So in 2019, we tried out a club event and it was much more popular. So let's take a look at the feedback. Let's look at the raw data. This is 18 to 19. The trade show was a big sore point. We moved up 9 points from a 70% satisfied or very satisfied to 79%. So the feedback that we acted on had a 9% impact on satisfaction rate. The booth traffic, which is different than pre-scheduled appointments, but it's another question about the trade show, that was up from 72 to 78. We talked about the general session not having good keynote speakers in the afternoon. We upgraded the content that we put in the latter half of the day and moved from 87% up to 91. So the number was pretty good at 87, but we want to, content is everything in our conference. So we made some changes and got it up to 91. So those three biggest gains of +4, +6, +9 are directly attributed to us capturing feedback and making moves based on that feedback. That's the point here. The data has to be looked at and it has to be actioned on. Collecting data just because you want to check the box that you've gotten the data means nothing if it's not looked at and used to better the experience and better the event program going forward. So giving you a lot of info here, but some key takeaways. I think there are three. Your events are bursting with feedback from your attendees, and it's not just the traditional post-event survey. That's what we all think about, but it's before, it's during, it's after, it's with actual questions that they fill out electronically, or it's with ways they interact with the event. Where do they go? What do they look at? Who do they talk to? What do they see? If we can track all of that, that is feedback. A strategic feedback program ensures you fully capture and analyze event data for insights. So it's not just about the capturing. You need to have tools that help you make sense of the data and help you visualize year over year, quarter over quarter, and the trends so you can move the events in the right direction. And last, this one's slightly self-serving, but we believe a cohesive event management platform can easily make your strategic feedback program a reality. You do need to invest in good tools to help you do a lot of the things that I mentioned throughout the presentation today. So with that, we do want to open it up for questions. I know that some have been coming in during the session, which is fantastic, but we do want to open it up. Tyler, if you want to share some of the questions that we've seen and keep them coming, and we'll entertain those questions for a bit and then fire up the survey for everyone.
Excellent. Thank you, Brian. Great presentation. As he said, keep those questions coming in. We're still accepting them, so either on the chat or via the Q&A. But that said, let's jump into one right now. This person is interested on how can they increase response rate. Do you recommend offering incentives for survey completion?
I do. That's why we're giving the ebook and the $5 coffee card after this survey that we send to you guys. Sometimes that's going to make financial sense. Sometimes it won't. But yes, some sort of incentive makes a lot of sense in many instances. So I think about what you can afford, and maybe it doesn't have to even be monetary. Like the ebook in this case, we already wrote it. So giving you access to it is really not a big deal. There's no extra cost to us whatsoever. But it's bait, if you will, to have a higher response rate, and then of course we'll share that content with you. So we think it matters.
And you guys have a wealth of content to draw from too, I got to say.
Oh, thank you. As do you at meetings today.
Thank you. Also, here's another one. You mentioned a net promoter score as a KPI. Can you explain a little more about that and what it is and what it means for my business and our events?
Yeah, so a net promoter score, it measures the customer experience and helps predict business growth, right? So you need to know who's truly promoting your business and your events, who's passive, and who's a detractor. So it's a standard thing. It goes from 0 to 10 scale. And what you do is you subtract detractors, and detractors are anyone that's from a 0 to a 6. You subtract them from the promoters. So promoters we regard as 9 and 10s, 7 and 8s are kind of passive, and then detractors are 0 to 6. So you might have 40% of people are promoters, 15 are passive, and then that'd leave 45% detractors. You'd have a -5 net promoter score. That's bad, right? So you want to know you have more promoters than detractors. So a better score would be you have 80 promoters, 10 passive, and 10 detractors. That would be a score of 70. So it's a very consistent way to measure how you're performing in your message and in your delivery. And I very highly consider using an NPS score on each event, because that's a constant you can always refer back to. And then for sure, when you look at benchmark data, others will be doing benchmark data around NPS score as well. So you know that you'll have industry comparables to look at.
Excellent. What are your thoughts on session surveys versus daily surveys versus general feedback surveys after the event is over?
I like all of them. I get the point that it might feel like you're inundating folks. I think if you wait to the end of the day on a session survey feedback mechanism, it's not top of mind. So the best case scenario is at the end of a session, the speaker stands up and says, "Hey guys, really want to capture your feedback. Can everyone pull out your phone and look down? It's already on your screen because it's right on the heart of the app. You see that there's a session feedback button right there next to the session that you're sitting in right now. Just tap it. and there's 3 questions. Can you do that real quick? So I suggest doing that right then and there because there's no better time, but it really does take getting your speakers to share that reminder. I don't think it's a bad idea at the end of a day to have a push notification that says, click here to get to the survey hub and answer questions for any sessions that you weren't able to get to earlier. And then there's kind of like a landing page, which will have all 5 sessions that you went to, and you'll see you did 2, but you didn't do the other 3. And then it'll give you an opportunity right from that kind of daily push that lets you get back to the 3.
Do you think people are getting just more used to doing this, to answering questions and surveys? Maybe 5 years ago, it might have seemed more of a burden than it does now as people are more used to it.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's so easy. Pen and paper is a pain, and everyone's got the phone in their hand. It's so simple to give feedback. So I think they're used to it, but it also it's how the organizer pitches it.
Yeah.
They need to share, look, we care greatly about your experience. We pore over the data that you provide to us to make your experience and your engagement at our event top notch. We can't do that without collecting some key critical pieces of information from you. And we're going to make it as painless as possible. You can do it right from your phone, and it's only 3 questions. Can you do that for us? And I think explaining it that way, who's going to look you straight in the eye after a session and say, no, I'm not going to do that. So let me give you a case study. I have sales reps that go do lunch and learns across the country all year long. So at any given day, we might have 20 to 30 people, 20 to 50 people, frankly, at 4 or 5 different locations. Some of my sales reps get a lot of feedback from our mobile app. So we give people a mobile app, and then they're supposed to fill out a survey at the end of the session. And some are terrible at it. So the difference, I have some that get like 100% survey response rate, and I have some of my sales reps that only get 15% response rate. So then I have them do it for me. And it all comes down to, are they saying it? And are they saying it with passion, sort of the way that I just did a moment ago? It makes all the difference in the world in the response rate.
Great. And do you have any suggested language to give to registrants when using passive tracking?
Yeah, we have default language, but it's editable. But it basically says, this badge has an RFID chip, which allows us to track, areas of the event that you're engaging with. Do you agree to be tracked in that manner? Something like that.
Excellent. And how about when to request a full conference feedback survey? Is there a time frame after the event that's sort of the prime time to do that? And when do you think it's too late to do something like that?
I think you could go as far out as like 3 days. I think if 4th day is too late, I encourage them the next day. I think the same day you might send a post-event email that's kind of like, hey, here's a photo album of what just happened. Here's links to some of the keynote presentations on video. And thank you so much for being a part of our event, et cetera, et cetera. If your survey's ready at that time, sure, why not provide a link? But in that email, there might be too many calls to action because you're giving them links to other content to consume. So what we see is people sweep in the next day. Now that you're back home and now that you're settled back at your desk, we're asking for 10 minutes max of your time to give us feedback. And you can give an incentive there as well. If your registration site is set for your next event, next quarter or next year, you can give people a code upon completing the survey that would allow them to register right then and there and get, who knows, $10 off, $25 off, something like that.
Excellent. And this is a question about mandatory questions. You recommend using them, and I know you covered sort of your philosophy on open-ended questions, but do you recommend using mandatory questions? And can you sneak in a few open-ended questions too?
Yeah, I suggest both. I think you need some mandatory questions. Otherwise, they won't fill out any of them. So get the first few to be mandatory. That gets them into the rhythm of taking the survey. Then you could have some non-mandatory, but now that they're in that section and they're actually doing it, you'll get a higher likelihood of them completing the non-required question. And as I said before, you do want a mix of drop downs that make it super easy for people, but open-ended questions as well that'll give you even more valuable insights. So yes to all of it, but you don't want to do too much of any of it. You can't have too many mandatory questions and you can't have too many open-ended.
Excellent. And then I had a great question question here just about the other webinars offered by CVent, and I got to say we do one with you about every month, and they're all great. So I guess head on over to the CVent's website. You can probably find more, and then of course meetingstoday.com in our webinar sections. And then we're getting near the end of our presentation here today. And, you know, maybe just another question, and I guess we kind of covered this before, but, you know, just the timing of these. Is it best just to hit them right after a session finishes, or kind of save them up for the end of the day?
Per session.
Yeah. I guess it's just right on their mind, and you're probably going to get a lot more accurate and usable responses right after a session ends.
If I went to 7 sessions and then I get the feedback at the end of the day, I don't even remember everything from the first 2 sessions. I just had 9 hours of content thrown at me, and my head is spinning.
Right. Yeah, that's a very key point. And after those 9 hours, you might even just want to disconnect and go have dinner or something like that, right?
Exactly.
Well, great. Well, thank you, Brian. A real informative presentation. Really appreciate all the great information. So thanks a bunch.
No problem. Appreciate the partnership, Tyler.
Excellent. All right. Well, and then and we appreciate it too, Brian. Thank you. In following today's webinar, you'll be redirected to a short survey submitted by CVent, and upon completion of the survey, you'll be redirected to today's webinar club page. We had some questions about ancillary materials. They're all available there, so check it out, including the CEU credit information. Each webinar we do has its own unique webinar club page where you can download each presentation, view the webinar on demand, obtain each CMP credit certificate, and more. Brian has also provided some additional information on this topic, and that's also on the webinar club page. So lots of great info there you'll want to check out. So thanks again to Brian, our speaker, and to all of you, of course, for joining us for this webinar today. Have a great rest of the day, and we hope to see you again soon.